జయ హో రామానుజ జయ జై రామానుజ జయ హో రామానుజ జయ జై రామానుజ. ఇక రామచంద్రుని అనుగ్రహం కార్యకి ప్రత్యేకమైనటువంటి ఈ కార్యక్రమంలో ఇక మనకి శ్రీమతి శారదా పూర్ణ సొంఠి గారిని ఆహ్వానిస్తున్నాము. జయ జయ హో జయ హో వెయ్యేళ్ళు శతమానం భవతి శతాయు ఆయుస్సేవేంద్రియై ప్రతిష్టతి. తలవడమే తలపులో అని తల్లి అలాగే ఇంతగా అనుగ్రహమా. అమ్మో అమ్మో, మనసులో మాట మనసులోనే ఉంది. ఇలా అన్నామా లేదా, అంత ఇది ప్రత్యేకతమ్మ. సకల సన్మంగళాని భవంతు. ఆళ్వార్మానార్య దివ్య తిరుగలే సరే. ఓం పూర్ణమిదం పూర్ణమదః పూర్ణాత్ పూర్ణముదచ్యతే పూర్ణస్య పూర్ణమాదాయ పూర్ణమేవావశిష్యతే. ఓం శాంతి శాంతి శాంతి. డాక్టర్ శారదా పూర్ణ సొంఠి, శ్రీమతి శారదా పూర్ణ సొంఠి. The introduction will be given by Sriman Simhalu Sri Perumbudur Kandala from Chicago. Really, she does not need any introduction. Still, it is our responsibility to introduce to all our listeners. We can say that many are watching and many are listening and many more are very curious. And to all of them, Dr. Sarada Purna Sonty garu, she is giving the darshanam to all of them. It is a great blessing to all of us. Just let us now welcome. And now Sri Nandi Simhalu, Sri Perumbudur Kandala Babu, welcome to Sri. Jai Srimanarayana.
Jai Srimanarayana.
Jai Srimanarayana.
Srinivasa Ramanuja Pravachana Goshthi welcomes Dr. Sarada Purna Sonty ji and Dr. Sriram Sonty ji. So the first speaker will be Dr. Sarada Purna Sonty ji and followed by Dr. Sriram Sonty ji. So Dr. Sarada Purna Sonty is a poet, scholar, creative writer, published author of Sanskrit, Telugu and English works. Dr. Sarada Purna Sonty received doctoral degree in Telugu literature, second doctoral degree in Sanskrit, submitted D.Litt thesis on musicology. She envisions repositioning ancient wisdom and knowledge. Dr. Sarada Sonty received the top 10 living Telugu legends of USA award, presidential recognition for Sapna from Honorable President of India in 2019, the recognition award by Vice President of India 2020. Dr. Sonty served as a Hindu delegate to the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago and other venues worldwide. She is the founder, director and owner of several ventures: Sapna to promote Indian culture, Center for Telugu Studies, SRI Foundation, Sonty Publications and many more. She received academic acclaim for several works including the Talapaka Annamacharyani Nritya Sangeeta Kalabhignata, a research work on Annamacharya compositions, and also Kalidasa Meghadutam. She did translation into Telugu with commentary. Dr. Sarada Purna Sonty is one of the foremost thinkers and writers in the field of performing art traditions of India, Indological disciplines, and interfaith interactions. The topic for today's lecture is Akshara Padeeyam. It's in short, it is to understand the syllables, words, sentences from the point of view of unitary sounds. So, please, we welcome
Dr. Sarada Purna Sonty garu. Srinivasa Ramanuja Antarjati Pravatana Goshthi welcomes you. Please start your lecture. Jai ho, jai ho.
वाङ्मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठिता मा विरावीर्म एधि वेदस्य माणीस्त श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासि रनेनाधीतेनाहोरात्रान् सन्दधामृतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु मामवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. May the word of mine be firmly established in my mind. May the mind of mine be firmly expressed in my words. The reason, the cause, my Guru, myself, and my Jiva in me may be in unison and in accord. ऐन्दव्याकलयावतं शिवतरो विस्तारनादात्मकं तद्रूपं जननी स्मरामि परमं चिन्मात्रमेकं तव यत्रोदेति पराभिधा भगवती तासां हि तासां पदं पश्यन्ति तव मध्यमा विजयते स्वैरं हि सा वैखरी. Namaskaram and happy greetings to the August gathering, friends, viewers who are present today. My gratitude and my greetings to SRI, Srinivasa Ramanuja International Foundation, Dr. Satyavati Kandala, for having me here today for the Goshthi. Humbled by the introduction, keeping all that aside, I'm a very strong student at this stage of my life, working on Akshara Padeeyam. In the next 30 minutes of my speech, I will be deliberating definitions, purpose, goal, method, references, and theory proposed as part one. And the second part includes examples, explanations, and conclusions. Definitions are given in the first part, the main two components, the centrality of the talk is Akshara and Vak. Akshara, as our friend just mentioned, it's a unitary sound syllable of human utterance. Akshara is a cosmotheandric reality. The cosmotheandric reality is nothing other than but the intuition only a human being possesses. It is the total integrated vision of the seamless fabric of the entire totality and the entire reality, the undivided consciousness of the totality at unitary macro level. So Akshara is a cosmotheandric reality, that is intuition. It is the total integrated vision at unitary micro level. That is what our first step is. And then we raise about to Vak. It is the whole capsule that holds the intent and the meaning in visible form, sound, meaning, and they all become one. Vak, the Vak, causes and is, and it causes and is the revelation itself. Vak is the primary principle of intelligibility. And also, the Vak is the principle of pure affirmation emerging out as from the sheer nothingness. The purpose of this Akshara Padeeyam is Jivantaranga Parirakshana. That means protecting human inner ecology. Because that's where it springs. The goal of this research is to reiterate Akshara, the symbolic unitary syllable of speech, which is constitutively connected to the word of the human speech. It is intelligibility, principle of reason, source of knowledge, of jnana imagery, the purpose and the power of intellect, the rational structure of reality itself. And another definition that we can give for Akshara is antiphon. It's a word. That means it is the sound what is sung in the beginning, continued all the way till the end, and it ends to encapsulate the whole purpose. That is why Akshara is called Brahman, the imperishable, the spirit, the entire literal cognizance. It formulates the basic hermeneutical principle. This is a method. It is a study of methodological, philosophical principles of interpretation. I'm here to interpret Akshara. For that, I need a method. I need a philosophical principle for the interpretation. And it is the basic unit of sound. That is the interiorization of life energy, of manifest reality, the consequential, the revelational, liturgical, cosmological aspects of human utterance. The method used here is, as we talked about till now, every Akshara has a complete, profound meaning. When combined, it brings forth the intent through the vak, and it attempts to address, analyze, provide theory for the unitary sound syllable called Aksharas. It's the stage before. And the references are taken from Krishna Yajurveda, Taittiriya Brahmanam, Taittiriya Aranyakam, Pratishakya, Siksha Granthas, Upanishads, and Laukika Samskrita Kavyas. To make it more contemporary, relevant to all of us, a Vedic scholar, a Veda Pandit, Shri Purna Vishwanatha Achyuta Devarayalu. He is the scholar. He has written Grantha called Veda Ravindam, in which the centrality is the Akshara. The base, the foundation of this theory is Vedic Akshara from Veda Samhita and Maheshwara Sutrani of Panini of the Laukika Samskrita Grantha. And the theory proposed is by Sarada Purna, and the guru, mentor, guide, and the teacher who made this research work possible is Sri Purna, late Sri Vishwanatha Achyuta Devarayalu Garu, a scholar himself. And the aspects mentioned in this are two. The 4 stages proposed by Bhartruhari, Para, Pasyanti, Madhyama, Vaikari, and the 7 stages proposed by Veda Vangmayam. That is the interesting part here. And Akshara Padeeyam, as I mentioned, it efforts to attempt to illustrate, to explain how to understand the syllables, words, sentences from the point of view of the unitary sounds, Akshara. The meaning of padas, words, sentences in collation with the meaning of the individual unitary sounds called Aksharas. So we are deriving the meaning of the vak from the Akshara itself. Manohi Saraswan Vak Saraswati Yetau Sarasvata Utsav. Shatapada Brahmana says this. The main focus is the relation between the speaker, the utterance, the subjective interconnectivity. Oral communication processes will not be directly transfer the contents of the intention of the thought. The competence stimulating the inherent ability to gain Akshara intents within human being will do the needful. That means what Akshara Shakti propels specific Akshara units intended for the meaning, to transfer the meaning for explicit act. Bhartruhari in Akshara Padeeyam says that it is not the words, but the whole sentence with all the words in place will give the meaning. Akshara Padeeyam wants to say that everything stays in the Akshara, the unitary sound syllable. For this, we need to go a little forward with this. Today, we are not traveling back to Vedic times, where time-space concept don't exist. We are going to stand firmly on ground in present as beings, make an effort to understand the difference and the effect of time and space, if any. That is what we are doing. Humans are the same people, same individuals, then and now. We have not developed any new bodily parts, or multiple hands, or Dashagriva, or 10 hands. No. The Padartha, that is the physical matter that had crystallized, remained the same. Physical matter crystallization or formation process has not changed. Basic 5 elements, Panchabhuta Ganas, still remain the same number. We did not allow any other alien bhuta to join. Prana energy constitution did not change. Prana, and we are breathing. We are not breathing carbon dioxide. We are still breathing oxygen and still exhaling carbon dioxide. Brain did not develop any new lobes. Oral cavity functions the same with 6 articulation points. Veda talks about human abilities, human energies, human experiences, life which is yet to manifest. Whatever manifestation happened, Veda doesn't talk about it because the Akshara is at energy state. Then why do we push back the word Veda and Vedic knowledge to antiquity? Why do we disregard, throw away the greatest tool that we have in our hands? For what? There is no other comprehensive mechanism, self-explanatory perfect system other than Veda. Nothing has changed. And what is happening here? Dictionary states that dhvani, as in Sanskrit, sound is a sensation of stimulation produced by the organ of hearing, by vibrations transmitted through air and other medium. That is the definition we get. And I have gone through Amarakosham and looked for the meanings and the other dictionaries, prepared for the worldly languages. But the Akshara and the Vedakshara, the language built on the foundation of Akshara, doesn't depend on the worldly explanations. According to the scientific explanation, any auditory effect or auditory disturbance is sound. That is what science says. The acoustic engineers' descriptions will be something different. Physics says that sonic, supersonic, or ultra frequencies are compressed waves in a particular medium. That is what Shabda that we hear. Beyond all this, Eastern studies look at it in a different way. All the prosaic definitions and theories given by the science and other forms of learning, sound is a profound experience that we all know. This envelops human life from the birth to the death. And there is silence, into which ahata, anahata, nada are connected. That means single hand clapping and two hands clapping. I feel that the subject of this study is very crucial at this stage, since the modern living conditions are directly affected to the extreme levels and sound is major pollutant, both in terms of decibels and disharmonies. To understand all these dimensions of dhvani sound, one must make an effort to know the relationship between the light and the space. Sound is the primal energy and imagery of the being. The word before the world, the word before the world is Akshara. That means the whole creation happened due to Akshara, because of Akshara. Bhartrihari in Vakya Padeeyam, first canto, 124, declares that in this universe there is no form of knowledge which is not perceived through sound. Universe is the result of the sound. Wonderful. Manu, Smritikaras of the yesteryears proclaimed that utterance Vak brought forth the universe. The mighty Shiva pronounced Bhu, and the earth happened. From the sounds of Vedas, the manifest occurred. The words we, the humans, speak gained meaning because of the sound which is external or physical character. We need to question that. We need to think about it. We live in an energetic, vibrant Akshara Matrix. How is that? Which is embedded in the human oral cavity. Every Akshara we pronounce has a significant and specific place and position in this matrix. The matrix is the oral cavity. The potency, the intensity of the sound vibration changes its purpose, its meaning, its method, and its beginning and its end. Keeping this preamble in mind, I am trying to shed some light on this. Life is continuum of thoughts, actions, and events. Area of the articulation, the main area of life starts is from the oral cavity. Where is it coming from? Where is this nada coming from? Parapasyanti Madhyama Vaikari, the 4 stages. Our scholars of yesteryears has given tremendous explanation. As Shatapada Brahmana says, Vaghai Yajnaha. Vak itself is a yajna. Our thoughts, ideas, hopes, fears, intentions, desires, dreams, goals, and all human experiences find place and seek help from Akshara for manifestation. We depend on that. All worldly languages are made and designed by the human, for expression. And now, the languages are meant to share self, express what human sees and knows outside their life. What we know about sound, space, light, matrix is very minimal. The worldly languages put together, combined, will contain what all we know now, what we are talking now. We need to know the forces integral and within to understand the manifestation of the creation, for which we create languages to understand the world. It is unique language with a purpose. The Akshara language, Akshara Padeeyam, is a unique language for this purpose to understand how and what is happening within to understand the outer. Today, the ancient studies of sounds are considered as alternate sciences. In modern science, the only system of thought that deals with is sound, dhvani, not akshara. Till today, not very many accept this position. As we move forward with the intent and advanced technologies, no choice is left for us. Ancient, traditional, and speculative worldview. What is the difference between the scientific worldview and traditional speculative worldview? Basically, it is methodological. Modern science deals with the world. Scientists are concerned with constructions of theories which are essentially models of the real physical world, but not the reality itself. Real world models are different from reality, just as living is different from life. In today's science, discovery is a theoretical advancement. Physicists make theories about black hole, but no one ever saw that or experienced that. Traditional sciences are based on self-experience and experience of the self. The knowledge depends on real experience. That means everything is within. The within, the implicit, seeks expression. And that expression, for that expression, we pick up these aksharas. And where are these aksharas? How many are them? As Panini says, or any scholars, Vedic scholars, whoever says, how many are they? How many combinations can we make? Meta-sciences formulate original meta-science, articulates its meanings, and mediates between reality and the real world. The Vedic seers proclaimed that Brahman, the absolute void, is Brahma, that expands. In the original meta-sign, which cannot be heard, but from which the ear has hearing. Seers could not explain today's world, but they gave a ground to experience, to see what can be seen. That language has no worldly format. Hence, man is not, the language is not man-made. Akshara is apaurushaya. Vedic language is apaurushaya. To understand reality, self, and experience, we need Veda Akshara, Veda Bhasha, and hence Akshara Padeeyam. Till now, the last is the goal. Using Vedakshara energy to understand the life in general for harmony, peace, and happiness. I will go from here to few explanations which I would like to tell you. The competence to understand the nature of the things can be defined as philosophy. We all know that. To understand nature of any object requires two basic elements: intellectual climate and interdisciplinary research mind. What one says, the sayable, is different from what one knows, the knowable. The knowable is different from the sayable. The process is expression through words, which is known as speech. This is what we have learned all these years. And the first step to understand the speech is by knowing the philosophy behind the process. That is tattva, which encompasses the word in the world, the human experience, within or without, the implicit or explicit, the inner, the outer, are in reciprocal relationship. These moments of experience reveal the micro, macro, gross, and subtle dimensions of the same element. The perennial rhythm is because of the time, space, and primal elements of matter, water, light, air, and sound. Each of these essential opens up a vast universe of interrelated elements and faculties. We as humans live in space, breathe air, consume water, experience light, imbibe sound, and energize with food. We receive sentence from the rest of the essential elements, which results self-awareness and heightened consciousness. This process becomes the foundation of the understanding and expression. Four are the definite grades of speech: para, pasyanti, madhyama, vaikhari. The learned and the wise know about it. Three are hidden in the sacred cave because we cannot see para, we cannot see pasyanti, we don't know madhyama, but we know the only vaikhari. Cave space echoes. Only one knows this cave space, this oral cavity, it echoes. Not giving away the meaning to the common unless it gets expressed. Humans speak only the fourth grade, that is the Vaikhari. Phonemes garland all the thoughts and rays within. That's what Veda says. In 2020, inquisitive mind is not prepared to accept all this, seeing that there are three hidden in the cave, inner cave, and there is one that manifests. Human knowledge is derived by either traditional speculative worldview or scientific worldview. The difference between the two is, as we talked about, methodological. Philosophy is tattva. Philosophy can be defined in many ways. The philosophy is the natural inclination to phenomenal or sensualist view. Material principles of matter are things, mode of their origin and their disappearance. Philosophy is an assumption at first principle of understanding substance without qualities, out of which the antithesis, hot, cold, dark, light, small, big, all this happens. At abstract level, love of wisdom is philosophy. The process that leads or directs one to the investigation of ultimate basis and essential nature is the visible world. Understanding the nature and the harmonic unity in diversity. I am trying to explain what tattva is. Tattva is something comes out of the experience, cognition of human mind, which can be of three parts: cognition, spirit, and appetitive cognition, spirit. All these are different virtues of that. Cognition has wisdom. Spirit has courage. Appetite has temperance and continuance. Philosophy is a theory that aims to recognize where before all the things. The philosophical endeavor to continue to attain the ultimate ground of things by induction, by understanding various factors of life. And idealism and philosophy. Idealism is something totally different. Idealism means the reference of a person in his entirety to certain ideas which determines his actions. But that's not what we are talking. The ideal has a capacity to fight the external activity. The word idealism is different. We have to consider that also here. Vedas and Akshara. Veda is what we know. The knowing is Veda. Known is Veda. Knowledge is Veda, encapsulated in one. And how did that happen? Vedas with 6 auxiliaries declared that Aksharam in the form of Agni, fire element, is innate and natural for the human being. Philosophical expression of Eastern reflective thinking of Indian subcontinent reveals Vedas as spontaneous energy. Agni ekakṣarena vachamuda jayate. Krishna Yajurveda talks about it. And we said it. Each act is a yajna. Agni, yajna, sanghatana are the three stages that happens here. And we do need to address those. The live, energetic, vibrant Akshara matrix is embedded in the mouth of the human being. Oral cavity is the Akshara articulation cave, a three-dimensional space, maybe of 3-inch width, 3-inch breadth, with 2 inches height in approximation. Worldly languages are built on this activity that happens in this space. When we look at this matrix, one can clearly see and notice and orderly, precise system and the arrangements of the Akshara positions. The arrangement is very scientific and perfect. The gutturals, palatals, cerebrals, linguals, labials, nasal sound are the articulation points in the oral cavity, formed with effort of the tongue. The tongue can jump at any point in the oral cavity and produce consonant. Sound before the vowel joins makes it expressible, complete with meaning and purposeful later. These letters are separate, recognizable sound units. Vowel speaking area is spread from the throat to the lips. This indicates the boundaries of the human speech. We need to remember the boundary area also. The arrangement of positions of articulation in the mouth, either from the right to left or top to bottom, is very specific for all human beings. And Akshara, it is the primordial principle of the origin. That is what I wanted to say. It is finite, immense, expansive, and beyond. Yet it is subservient to the Atman. Akshara is the womb of the universe. Which universe? The implicit, the inner universe, which manifests as the outer. Akshara belongs to two worlds, the inner, the outer, the created, uncreated, manifest, unmanifest. Akshara has a unique mediatory capacity, mediation ability between the inner and the outer. And it starts in the inner. That is the reason why we talked about the first sentence, Jiva Antargata Parirakshana, unless we protect the area where it is coming, unless we protect the mother when she is pregnant with the child cannot see the world. And the Akshara need to come out of this cave. For that, we need to protect the inner world. And Akshara yet gloatingly can say that, see, I am better than you and yourself, because whatever you know, I make it all known. That is true. I communicate for you. I allow you to express and explicate. I save it as me in my own form. The Akshara will never change. I am the subject of speech as well as the object. I am the primordial energy, but get created by you. You created, you brings it out. You bring it out. I am within you. You carry me and you deliver me. Akshara has 36,000 forms of fire elements. Vispulingas, it's called. Yatho sudipta tavakaha vispulingaha sahasrasaha prabhavante. Mundakopanishad Vakyam. And the Aksharartham is to understand the Aksharartham. We need to address 4 aspects. Till now, we said the Aksharas are within, they are implicit. And it gets expressed, we deliver them, and it gets manifested in 4 stages: Rucha, Parama, Vyoma, Akshara. How interesting these words are. Rucha, that means the Brahmi, that Brahma becomes Aindri Devata. That means sensorial energy transforming into universal energy. Rucha, Rucham means sensorial energy transforming into universal energy. That means when universal energy is encapsulated in microforms, it manifests as cerebral sounds. That is the reason why the chakara. And the second one is human potentiality of senses, including sixth sense, stays in the manas. Rucham, the manas, human potentiality of all sensorial experiences, including the sixth sense, in total is at one particular place which is named as manas. Knowledge of non-local realms. Once we participate, it becomes local. And once we perceive, it becomes local. That is the reason why we can say that conceivable, unmanifest truth versus perceivable, manifest truth. There are 3 stages here. Please keep an eye on that and keep your mind on that. Energy at its highest potential state, beyond the power of sense, emotions, rational mind, and all that. That is where the Akshara forms. And what we are trying to say here is, once the Aksharas are formed, what happens? Place where breath, intellect, emotions, speech ability, inherent thinking, potency, they all combined in unitary level. That means these 4 stages happens at Parama level. Beyond the Parama, the Akshara stage forms. This can be perceived only with contemplation, concentration, single-pointedness, yoga, and discipline of emotional stability. A being's inner realms are Vyoma. The 4, as we talked about, the Vyoma is the 4. The 4th one is the Vyoma. That means the Antarjagat. The Akshara energy can be utilized in 2 or 3 ways. The mantra, where the meaning of and the artha is primary. Tantra, where the sound, the shabda is the primary. Ardha prayogam, prayogardham, 2 things. Aksharardham and Akshara Shakti. And we don't need to talk about the foreign languages or maybe other languages. They say that the tantra is used in a different way. They say tick, 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 sounds like that. It's called Majestic Spell. That is the Latin mantra. But what we perceive is from the Akshara state. To understand or to prove anything, we need pratyaksha, that is perception, and anumana, inference, and upamana, comparison, and arthapati, that is postulation, and anupalabdhi, non-apprehension, and verbality, that is shabda. All the granthas we have, Nyaya, Mimamsa, Vedanta, Sankhya, all these has given all the explanations for all these things. But what is the difference that I am trying to prove here? And I am taking few mantras, that is, Ucharana is the utterance. That means how the life energy functions or acts. If you say it in Telugu, Pranam Vyavaharinche Tiro is Ucharana. And it forms in Saptadasha. For the Ayatanam, there are 7 stages. How can we say that? Saptadasha Prajapati Taittiriya Brahmanam, it proclaims. Saptadasha Prajapati. Prajapati, Praja is the Uha. It's absolute pure energy is Uha. Uha is called Praja in Veda. So who is the Prajapati? Ourselves. Uhapati, ourselves. For Prajapati, there are Saptadasha. For what? For Uha. For Praja. Praja is Uha. Where? Traya ime lokaha. In 3 lokas, in 3 realms. That means the being in us stays in 3 levels, 3 worlds: physical, subtle, and inner. And Triya Vriddhihi, it grows, it evolves in 3 stages. Swa, that is self; Mano, that means the senses; Devata, the transcended. 3 stages. Panko Yajanaha, that means this life energy always does yajna, that is act, with prana. And panko, it goes, the action goes, the yajna goes in 5 stages. We need to talk about that too. Now, basing on this Saptadasa, Triloka, Trivruddhi, Panchayajna, we come, the person brings Akshara, that makes it 7. And the 7 stages are, this is the subject that has been hidden for quite long time. It was explained at one point, at one time. Shakapuni also did that. Gautama did that. And these words were not explained because it is so subtle, and for it, it needs absolute travel within. Antar Jagat Yatra. I'm going to tell those 7 steps that Akshara forms. This is the theory that I've been working. Upamshu is the first one. The names are Upamshu, Dhvana, Nimada, Upadhimata, Mandra, Madhyama, Tara. These are the 7 stages. Again, Upamshu is the first one. So we are talking about Akshara formation. As we mentioned, on this earth or in creation, the oral cavity did not change. The syllables we utter did not develop any new combinations anywhere. Whether it is any part of the globe, any part of the language, any part of the human, any part of the time, is the same syllables a human can utter. From the starting the second till it ends. So those are the ones which helps us understand the world that we live in. So we need to go to that level, the Akshara level, to understand and see what the Aksharartha is. Why Aksharartha is important, I also will bring in few examples. But before that, how the Akshara, the sounds that we utter, that manifest, that we explicit with a meaning in the form of a word is forming. The Akshara, the first stage is Upamshu. That means Upamshu stage, Pranamu Vyavaharinchu Tiru, how life energy works. The second one is Dvana. It is life energy and Prana Shakti resulting thought energy and thoughts. That means the life energy, it has its subtle moves like the gentle waves of an ocean. With a little breeze, how the water moves. That is the stage the dhyana is. That means before it gets manifested, before manifestation, the stage of voha, that means the subtlety, the water, undulating movement, is dhyana. And the third stage is nimada. That means that movement makes sound, it gets form. How? In the form of small, small pieces, units, micro units. The life energy combines with the fire element, that becomes the sound energy. The movement brings in sound. Fourth one, upabhimat. Uha jnanam ucharanaga mare stitiki manasu askaramu ichuta. That means prana energy with sound energy. Remember the prana energy with the sound energy combines to gain energy to get expressed with the help of desire of the mind. The next one is mandra. Manas, the experiential mind. Jnana, all knowing and known. Prana, the life energy. Kurika, that is icha, is the desire. Uha, and you remember the more movement, that is chaitanya, guna, lakshana. All they become unit, one unit. Mind, fire element, prana element, they all become one and they start dividing into bits and pieces. As we talked about 36,000 Vispulingas. That is the reason why I brought that. And the next stage, that is sixth, is ayatanam. What ayatanam says is the imagery of the anubhuti, of the experience. That means jiva lakshana. The chaitanya shakti imagery is ayatanam. And that ayatanam and the uha together become small units, and each one has its own form. They become the aksharas. Mind, heart are joining here. And the final stage is tara. That means at that stage, the entire energy, the physical, prana, the mental, the manas, the jnana, the atman and icha, they all combine, forms into aksharas, and they are all in a nice basket. When the physical activity, when we see something with our naked eye, we want to associate that's within. So we pick up aksharas. Who picks up the aksharas? If I say akshara, or if I say you, me, why do I say you? Why should I pick up? The thought, the expression, the feeling, my expression, reaching it to you, to your ear, and going within the entire vartulan, the circulation of the energy, the symbiosis, point A to point B, the entire symbiotic energy is forming at the same time. There are no steps. The 7 steps that I talked about happens at one time. Sapta dasaha prajapati. Sapta dashaha prajapati. 4 are there. That is us. It happens spontaneous. And mind, heart, physical life energy combines with the prana, becomes a sound. It builds words with unitary sound syllables, gains imagery, memory, and manifests as words to associate with the external world. From these 7 stages, aksharas form, and from the akshara parapasyanti madhyama vaikhari develops, and the vaikhari gets manifested as 14 vidyas, chaturvedas, shadangas, 16 upasanas, 125,000 yoga margas, and the Sanskrita aksharas 50, Prakrita aksharas 40, Telugu aksharas 36, And Andhra Bhasha 56, we cannot forget our Chinaisuri. And when this happens, the Aksharas happens this way. And what we need to talk about is, there is one point that I wanted to say. We pray every day the Vedaksharas to understand. We say that Shamcha me, mayascha me, priyancha me, nukamascha me, kamascha me, saumanasascha me, bhadrancha me, sheyascha me, till we go to Sugancha me, shayanancha me, sudinancha me. These are all our desires. We ask for it and we say that. At the same time, we say Mashascha me, Tilascha me, Mutkascha me, Khalvascha me, Godhumascha me, Masurascha me. What is this? And we don't stop there. Gardhascha me, Vatsascha me, Triyavicha me, Triyavicha me, Dityavacha me, Dauchihicha me. Here I am. I'm using the Akshara capacity to ask for Suvinanchami for a good day, for a good sleep, for good energy, for all auspiciousness, for all comfort, for all beautiful things, for Shreyas, Bhadram, Sukham, everything. At the same time, I say, Yavachami, what are those? Mudgachami, Masurachami. If you go into the explanations from, say, about 5th century till now, the only meanings we see is the pada ardha. Padartha. Once we say that I want this kind of grain, that kind of grain, I want urad dal, tur dal, masur dal, we can ask for those too. But is that what we ask? Is what it's meanings of this word? The words that we say, the letters that we utter, the letters that we try to use for our expression, is that the purpose? Are those just commodities? Are the Aksharas commodity? Bhagavad Gita doesn't agree with that. Upanishad doesn't agree with that. And Akshara Vibhuti, we need to see that, what Bhagavad Gita says, what Upanishad says. Akshara Padeeyam, what we are trying to understand here, to understand where the Aksharas are coming. The oral cavity, the mind, the heart, the physical being. Apart from this, what else are there? For the sound that we utter, we need to know the meaning. The meaning can be of Tatvartha, Samajikartha, Nighantukartha, Vyavaharartha, or Vastvartha, or Aksharartha. What that Akshara is doing. If I say Masura, Yavachame, Yava is a kind of dal, right? It's a dal. The Akshara Ya, when I pronounce, close your eyes and see, Ya, how it is being pronounced. Ya is used for Yatnam. And Va, when I say Va, that is labiodental sound. It is a complete sound. Unless I add the vowel, it doesn't even come out. I have to add to that prana shakti I need to add. So what I am trying to do is every akshara has a meaning. And that akshara is what we are trying to understand. That means I will tell you just a few aksharas and their arthas. Pranam, as we talked about, is life energy. Uha is nothing but absolute pure thinking process and its gains. Ichha is aspiration. Diksha is persistent focus. Prayatnam is unwavered effort. For us, we need all these to use to create any word. That means Manaswarupa Darshanam, Manasvabhava Shodhanam, Manas Samadhi Sampadam, Manognya Tattva Bhasuram, Madiya Pada Sevaya Hijayate Nirantaram, Namami Veda Mataram. And here we are trying to say those. And we need to verify many issues here. And why? Because the Aksharas we use, everything, the energy, the way to go out or the way to go in is the only one is this oral cavity. This is where the Akshara is forming. And I will take few letters and say R. The vowel R sound is the vowel sound represents a living energy, life energy. And the consonant Ru is representative of the variations, manifestations of that living being. It's the manifestation. Ka, when we say Ka, the guttural sound is the functional energy. And the Cha, Indraschakaraha, Yajurvedam. Indraschakaraha, Indra Shakti, that is sensorial energy. And Ta is proclamation. And Takara is for Pratishta, that means establishment. And Pa, union of physical, psychological, and intellectual, three aspects. When we say Pa, it is a bilabial sound. By that already the life energy, the fire, the energy, the potency, the movement, and everything became one, our mind, and it comes out in the form of Pa. Ga is a cerebral, again, transcendental action resulting state gained. Jakaram, the being in the creative state, it's also a transcendental stage. Dakara is the confirming of proclamation and established acts. And Makara is the experiential mind, a transcendental state. Na, self-experience gained by senses and self-knowledge. Yakara is the spontaneous action caused by three bodies at the same time. It's spontaneity. And when we use these arthas, for those sounds, we will know what we are doing. If we have to bring the meaning to it, Vayu, Vakara, as said, three lives, the entire totality of life energy being expressed. Dirgham is present continuous. Ya is Yatnam. U is sense of time. Akara is the life energy. Ikara is the sense of space. Ukara is the sense of time. These three, along with the combinations A, O, I, O, the meaning changes. And the words that we know, that Vedic words started in Vedic times, 10,000 years, maybe much more. From that time till now, that means from the day human is born till today, we use the same word. Agni, Prana, Oha, Vak, Mrityu, Indra, Sama, Vishnu, Kriya, Gana, Chanda. Mana, Apa, Mandra, Vayu, Yajna, Jiva, Kalpa. 2-letter words, 3-letter words, 4-letter words, 5-letter words. You bring in any. And we need to give the meaning to them from the meaning of the Akshara. When you build the word with the Akshara, each Akshara has an energy. Each Akshara energy gets manifested in particular way for a particular reason and for a particular result. And all of them put together, we make a word. For that word, we use, it's a big matrix. We use our analytical mind, rational mind, experiential mind, and our articulation area, 6 articulation points. All this happens in this body. And the Aksharas are there. And what are they? The Aksharas, as we all know, as I said, not a single Akshara is created right now. It's all done. As Jayanta Bhatto says, we cannot creating anything new in this world, but we can express in a newer way. And here, Akshara, the meaning of Akshara, when combined with another Akshara, what is the combination? How it is forming? What meaning is changing? What purpose is it serving? What result it's gaining? What it is going and being expressed? And the expression, when it reaches the other being, what is happening? All this comes from the Akshara. The difference between the no form virus and human being is that this ability of understanding and expression and to create symbiotic relationship. The COVID-19 doesn't have a symbiotic potentiality because it's only giving us. We are not giving anything to it. And the Akshara Shakti is what we need to work at this stage. And for me, still going with each Akshara, considering Panini's Ashtadhyayi and Maheshwara Sutra, the Aksharas are the same. As said million times, we haven't created any new Aksharas. It's all there. So each Akshara, it's a potentiality that we have. Our potentiality, how are we using right now? The Vedas used it to its fullest capacity and gave the full result. And we have kept it in the back burner or in our closets. We need to take it out. And we need to bring it out. And understand within, the world within, and understand the world without. When we understand, we ourselves create that symbiosis. And when we clean within, we clean the external world. At present time, it is not the matter anymore. Matter doesn't matter anymore. It is the sound. It is the Shabda Gunaka Mahakasham, the Lakshana of the sound. Why haven't we taken Apas Tejo Prithviva, that 5 gunas? Because each one sheds. The earth Lakshana has 5. And when it reaches to Prithvi, Apas. When it comes to Apas, Apas has 4 qualities. It sheds only 1. Tejaha, it sheds 2 qualities. It has 3. Vayuhu, it sheds 3, 4 and has 1 more. Akasham, it has Nada Gunam. Nadam is within and without. And so here, the Aksharartha is very important. The Akshara Shakti that we have, we need to address that. To understand the Akshara Shakti, if we take the words, Anukramanika, if you take any Vedic literature, if you put in the words and see what are all the Aksharas that it has used. For Jnana and Mano, most of them are Anuswara Aksharas. Anything Yajna related, it is the Yakara, Yatna, Prayatna. You can take the Akshara and look at the meaning and see why that Akshara is used and what are the other Aksharas combined with it to make it a word, that is Vak. So the Sambandham, the relationship between Vak and Akshara, and the nature of Akshara that we have, because it's our own capacity, is the biggest asset human is born with. That Akshara knowledge is what we need to address right now for the betterment and the harmony of the world today. That is the reason why this research I've been working on. Hopefully, with many deliberations, discussions, I will get an answer. And so I can share with all of you. And I truly appreciate your time to understand, for your patient hearing, for what I have to say. And I will close my talk with a few things that I wanted to say. The Akshara, the Vak, the Prana, the Jiva, the Brahman. And the 7 stages that I talked about. And the 4 stages Bhartruhari talked about. All these are the main elements in my research work. And I will come forward, I will come in front of you with my updated research work. And I'm very grateful to Dr. Kandala Garu and all the members of this Srinivasa Ramanuja International Foundation and the August gathering. Thank you very much for your time. Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Sarada. Thank you, Dr. Sarada Purna Garu. Really, you gave an vivid explanation throughout that really a virtual tour to Akshara Prapancham. We are all have really enjoyed. We are so happy, and those who have heard about the Akshara, today morning we were also discussing if you recite Vishnu Sahasranama, the first, second sloka, Muktanam Paramagati Avyayah Purushaha Sakshi Kshetrajno Akshara Evacha. That really caught me immediately. This Akshara today is Sarada Sonty are explaining, and this particular one has a. It is not when you want to understand something, you cannot give immediate meaning to that word. You have to go Purva Param. The fourth morning, and this has 6 continuous real, and the way you explain the 7 steps and also the 4th, Para, Paschanti, Madhyama, and Vaikhari. Only Vaikhari we can see that you really beautifully explained. That's why in my childhood my mother used to say, oh, that person's Vaikhari is not good. I was wondering, what is that Vaikhari is not good? That means the way they utter the word and all things. These are the things. But here, I just want to say, na aksharam mantram, na aksharam mantra rahitam, na moolam na cham aushadham, ayogyaha purushaha nasti, yojakaha atra durlabha. This after reciting, after listening this came in my mind, because there is no syllable which is not a mantra, there is no root plant that which is not a medicine one, and there is no person who is not useful. But people who can identify their utility and put them in usage are rare. That opportunity the God has given to us through Sarada Purna, who has come to identify that utility for all of us, and to yojayat. Yojakaha atra durlabha. Now we got the yojakaha atra sulabha eva. So because of your very highly intellectual talk, really we enjoyed. Hope anyone has any questions with, mainly youngsters sometimes ask some questions. Anybody? Any question? Just 2 minutes. No? If anyone wants to say something, please come forward. Okay. Now we immediately, because all the we already announced, any questions they give in email or by messages.
Please,
Yeah.
please.
They do, and immediately
Please
we'll
send
forward.
me emails,
Yeah.
because I have been working with great scholars regarding this particular subject.
Sure.
We can explain this better in our Indian languages, because I find it very hard to find equivalent words in English to explain the Akshara Shakti of each syllable that we utter. And once all this is formed, I will come in front of you. And if anybody has something to tell me to improve my own thinking, I'm glad, I'm very willingly, honorably will take it. Please send emails, communicate with me. And my email is sharadasonty@gmail.com. And our Dr. Kandala also have my email.
Yes, sure.
Send her questions to her, and I will be getting those, and I will answer to you.
Yeah,
To the extent that I know, to the extent that I learned.
Adi
Thank you.
Shankaracharya explained as embryology details. Today, with your talk, I felt that Adi Shankaracharya's reflections in the embryology of the thing and about the brain development, the Akshara has its roots. That's what I really appreciate. Now we invite Sriman Dr. Sriram Sonty. Sriram Sonty ji, happy birthday to you. Everyone has to say happy birthday. Today is Dr. Sriram Sonty ji's happy birthday, and we appreciate on this particular day we have the opportunity to listen valuable things. Now take more than 1 hour. Now we are saying not only 1 hour. It's more time we want to listen valuable things about Gandhiji's and reflections. So now Simhalu Sri Perambudur Kandala will just the introduction words will say Simhalu Sri Perambudur Kandala, please. Yeah.
Hi. The second lecture for today, the Tara Devi Memorial lecture, the one
Joint lecture is a couple. A couple which we don't want to divide. We want to, the couple is the one, not to separate them. Yeah.
So
That's what we want.
the combined lecture, the second part of the combined lecture is by Dr. Sriram Sonty from Chicago, US. Dr. Sriram Sonty is an ophthalmologist by profession and has done immense research on glaucoma pharmacology and presented over 180 presentations and published 125 publications. He is currently a glaucoma consultant at Midwest Eye Center, Calumet City, Illinois, and a clinical associate professor in the Department of Ophthalmology at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Dr. Sriram Sonty co-founded Sri Annamacharya Project of North America, SAPNA, a Hearts for Arts organization, and Sonty Renaissance International Foundation, SRI Foundation, a philanthropic family foundation with Dr. Sarada Purna Sonty. Dr. Sriram Sonty presented over 100 PowerPoint presentations on Gandhiji in person and online, and many photo exhibitions. In 2017, Dr. Sriram Sonty started Mahatma Gandhi Commemorative Stamp Initiative, and he has collected more than 5,000 signatures so far. He has also donated a lot of books related to Gandhi ji to libraries around the Chicagoland area, and he has also visited a lot of places of interest related to Gandhiji's life. Now he will speak on Gandhiji and spirituality, focusing on life, on reflections, and focusing on life-changing incident in Gandhiji's life. So we welcome.
Welcome, Dr. Sriram Sonty ji. Yeah. Why this?
So we just have small technical issue. We will just be back. Just hold on a second. We're connecting.
Oh.
Just hold on for a second.
Huh? Even there.
Okay. Shri Ram, Jai Ram,
Sri Rama, Jai Rama, Jai Jai Rama. Sri Rama, Jai Rama, Jai Jai Jai.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You're back.
Perfect now. You can hear? Yeah.
Yeah. So we welcome Dr.
Yeah,
Sriram.
we welcome Dr. Sriram Sonty ji. Please start. And everyone is eager to hear.
Can you open my PowerPoint presentation? It's open.
I'm looking at it. I'm seeing blank screen right now. Can you share it again, please?
Sharing? Button, sharing button. Na?
Yeah.
Where is the share button? Oh, here. Okay.
Yeah.
Got
You
it?
share the screen.
Okay, I'm sharing now.
Yes.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay. Okay. Can you see now? Good.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay.
Everyone can, yeah, share.
Okay.
Very good.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Sriram Sonty, as I was introduced. I'm an ophthalmologist by profession, but I became interested in Mahatma Gandhi in 1986 when I went as an invited speaker to the Ahmedabad Ophthalmological Society to present lectures on glaucoma. At that time, one of my professors, his name is Dr. Narendra Sood, he asked me, let us visit the Sabarmati ashram. And till 1986, I heard of Gandhi. I know who is Gandhi, but I never knew what is Gandhi all about, how he became Mahatma or Gandhi, what he became, and why he has existed in this current world for the generations to come. And at that time, my thought process had transformed into thinking, reading, expressing my readings about Mahatma Gandhi. And the second time this happened for me is in continuation was in 1999 when there was a second Council of World Parliament of World Religions meeting in Cape Town. Then I had the opportunity to visit many of the Gandhian places where Gandhi, who was called Mohandas, became Mahatma. And one place that really excited me or transformed me was the train station called Pietermaritzburg. Now it was called Maritzburg in 1890. This incident happened on Wednesday, June 7th, 1893 at 9 p.m. when Mahatma Gandhi was evicted from that first-class compartment to go into the third-class compartment. And at that time, I had a transformative experience, and I want to introduce the subject in three people's expressions in a few books I have read through during these 20 plus years. This is an introduction by Eknath Easwaran in a book. In India, Mahatma Gandhi is officially father of nation. Under his leadership, India attained freedom from the British Empire through a 30-year campaign based on complete non-violence that ended with both sides allied in respect and friendship. That alone would secure his place in the history books, but not necessarily his place in a series of world spiritual classics. For that, we need to understand why he belongs not so much to 20th century history as to the timeless lineage of the world's great mystics. Kith and kin with Francis of Assisi and other luminous figures whose writing appears in this series. More than that, we need to understand what his special contribution to this lineage is. The mystics, though they teach universals, are also each unique. Each has an intuition or insight, so to speak, a particular message that arises as a deep response to the needs of the times. And here, Gandhi shines like a beacon. He showed us the way out of the greatest problem of our age, that of the downward spiral of violence in every sphere of life that threatens to drag civilizations back into barbarism if we do not learn to master it. Most precious of all, Gandhi, like every great spiritual figure, but belonging to our own times, he gives us a glimpse of our evolutionary potential as human beings. He shows us that the spiritual life, far from being otherworldly, means living to one's highest ideals and giving full expression to every facet of personality in a life of selfless service. Even before he began his work in India, Gandhi was charged with being a saint dabbling in politics. Rather, he insisted it was the other way around. He was an ordinary man with ordinary human frailties, trying his best to apply basic ideas in whatever field his passion for service led him. We need to think of him as an explorer or perhaps a compulsive tinkerer like Thomas Edison, constantly experimenting with his character and conduct in search of what he called truth in the midst of the messy details of real life. As he did so, he was constantly trying to explain it all to himself and to others. At any point in this volume, we are dropping in on a lifelong conversation between the seeker after truth and an endless train of critics, not the least of whom was he himself. What did you mean by this? Why did you do that? When he says he is not a visionary but a practical idealist, he means that he knows precisely where he is going but is constantly testing his next step. Most of us who have survived a college education probably think of a book of some kind of edifice or at least a series of snapshots. But Gandhi's words are a river. His collected works fill 100 volumes, but only one of these, Satyagraha in South Africa, was written as a book. Virtually all the rest comprise speeches, letters, recorded conversations, and the brief columns in the weekly papers in which he opened his heart to an eager nation. Speaking mostly to Indians, he takes a good deal for granted. I must have read him weekly from college on, and it was like watching him think aloud. It makes an extraordinarily rich story, one of the 20th century's greatest dramas, but it's also, for all that, a flood of details. We need a way to navigate through all this, and I think our best guide is Gandhi himself. But not Gandhi the writer or leader. We need a sense of Gandhi the man, and that requires first a little stage setting. There are really two chapters in the story of Gandhi in South Africa. The second covers 8 years after 1906, in which Gandhi developed and tested his new method of nonviolent resistance called Satyagraha. But the first chapter to me is even more important because it talks the chrysalis of his transformation. The transformation. This is the most important thing that happened, is on Wednesday, June 7th, 1893 at 9 p.m. Some of the extracts of my presentation are from many books, among them an autobiography by Mahatma Gandhi himself, published many times, probably 1,000 editions. The Essential Gandhi, an anthology about Mahatma Gandhi, with edited by Louis Fisher, with a preface by Eknath Easwaran. Mohandas Gandhi, The Essential Writings, with selected introduction by John Deere, and an autobiography by Mahatma Gandhi. The Hindu Dharma.
Hindu Dharma, his opinion about Hindu religion.
Discourses on Gita.
Gandhian Rosary for prayer.
Discourses on Gita. And Mohan Mala, a Gandhian prayer.
Published by our foundation, Sonty Renaissance International Foundation.
Now, I would like to talk about the spiritual seeker of Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi has become a spiritual leader, had about 3 stages. One is childhood. Second, the experience in South Africa on June 7th, 1893. And the introduction of Satyagraha as a movement of nonviolence to achieve truer goals of civil liberties and civil rights and human rights. And then as a part of Indian independence movement. Gandhi was acclaimed as an apostle of peace and nonviolence. Here, Tawakkol Karman, a Nobel Peace Prize awardee in 2011, says, peace does not just mean to stop wars. Again, peace does not just mean to stop wars. We always say when there are no wars, we are peace situation, but also to stop oppression and injustice. This is where Gandhi comes in. The important thing is, yes, he also stopped wars in a way that I'm of the opinion that 3rd, 4th, and 5th World Wars did not happen because Gandhi presented an alternate solution to warfare. 1st and 2nd World Wars he couldn't avoid because he was far from realization and the world didn't know about his possibilities of peace through nonviolence. But 3rd, 4th, 5th World Wars, though everyone has nuclear weapons, they were going to put them behind themselves, come to the table and talk to avoid wars among nations. Here, the new climate activist Greta Thunberg says, when haters go after your looks and differences, it means they have nowhere left to go, and then you know you are winning. It's exactly what Gandhi said on what he experienced in June 7, 1893, about 1937 plus about 126 years ago. Here we see many social activists talking about how one should be humane as a human being because we are called human. And Robin Williams says, be kind to yourself. Mr. Rogers says, be kind to others. And Greta Thunberg says, be kind to the earth. And Jane Goodall says, be kind to animals. Dalai Lama says, be compassionate. And Nelson Mandela says, be the voice for change. And Jimmy Carter says, be humble. And Malala Yousafzai says, be brave. And Jill Biden, the wife of First Lady of US, says, be a teacher. And John Lewis says, be a good trouble. And now Kamala Harris says, be the first, but not the last. It's about time we realize the importance. What is common between Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr.? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is Both are colored people. One is a brown person who experienced institutionalized racism, and the other is a black person who experienced similar experiences in USA, attending to the African American civil rights. Here is an introduction about Gandhi by Sunil Khilnani in one of the books. Gandhi's presence in the 20th century, a century that perfected the art of extermination, is strangely arresting. His life seems peculiarly unhoused in the violent landscape of his times. How, by what twist of historical fate, did this frail, ungainly man with teapot ears, whose figure wrapped in handspun cloth evoked a faded, archetypal memory of saintliness, wander into the modern world and found for a time, did he electrify it? What was he doing there, and what can the trace of his presence mean to us today? More than 50 years after his assassination in 1948, Gandhi has become a symbol, a myth, and even a commodity. Yet we are still far from taking the measure of 20th century's most enigmatic and remarkable personality. Confronted by the vast corpus of his writings and speeches, at least 1,000 of books are there, 500 by himself and 500 by others, the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi make up a 100-volume monument. Interpreters continue to quarrel, seeing him variously as a spiritual paragon, a wily politician, a psychological and anthropological curiosity, an inventor of political techniques of nonviolence and civil disobedience, and as a critic of modernity. Gandhi was once asked, just before he was attending on the Quit India movement protest, when he was giving a lecture, "What is your message to the world?" Mahatma Gandhi said. Somebody asked, "My life is my message." And this whole history of his life is exactly a message to all of us. And we can take many an attribute from him to behave differently and to behave humane to the people around us. Here Gandhi says about education, he says the education should be with the training of the head, there should be that of the hand and the heart side by side. He wants people to be handcrafted very well and also be compassionate at the same side and at the same time, so their education benefits the humanity in more ways than one. Here, Gandhi expressing, "My life is my message." Here, Gandhi was a part of a vegetarian society when he was in London to become a barrister at law. But after Salt Satyagraha at Dundee in 1931, their same society had a reunion, and you see him with all the participants of the Vegetarian Society in 1891. Here, his women colleagues who have participated in his movement, one of the one closest to him is Sarojini Naidu, the Nightingale of India, who was an inspiration. They were mutual inspiration to each other, and Kamala Devi Chattopadhyaya. Here, the actual picture of the Vegetarian Society in 1890, Gandhi with them, and as you see, Gandhi is on the front row to your right in a suit, in a formal attire. This is the event I want to speak about. When Gandhi went to Durban and he was going to Pretoria to attend a civil lawsuit for a local Indian tradesman called Dada Abdullah Seth, where he was to interpret the documents who were in Gujarati to English-speaking judges. So he was hired by Dada Abdullah Seth to come and represent his case in Pretoria. And he went about on a train from Durban, and the train has reached the Marisburg station at 9 p.m. on Wednesday, June 7th, 1893. This is a clip from the movie Gandhi, where Ben Kingsley depicted the character of Gandhi. At that time, what happened, that will follow in a moment. Here is another picture in South African literature, a picture showing the Natal government-supported train system has evicted this human being of future years who's going to start the movement of Satyagraha and peace through nonviolence. And what they did has become a historical fact, and for which we all should be grateful to this man, because 1/3 of the world, right now we have 7 billion population, 1/3, about 1.7 billion people have obtained civil rights or human rights because of the concept he introduced called peace through nonviolence, the truth force, or satyagraha. So what happened that night? Let's see. Before we go to that, let's talk about Gandhi. Gandhi was born as Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi to Karamchand and Putlibai Gandhi in Porbandar, India on October 2nd, 1869. At 1882, at age 13, at the similar age, he marries Kasturibai Makanji. In 1888, September 4th, he sails to London to study law. And in 1891, he was admitted to the bar on June 11th, becomes a lawyer, and sails back to India the next day. This is the important event. In 1893, in end of May, he was contracted by Dada Abdullah Seth to represent his case, and he moves to Durban, South Africa to practice law. 1 week after his arrival, he's thrown off a train for refusing to move to the third-class section because of his skin color and decides to spend all his energy fighting racism and injustice. In 1904, he founds the weekly newspaper Indian Opinion in South Africa, buys 100 acres near Durban and founds the first ashram called Phoenix Settlement Farm. In 1906, September 11, he gives a stirring speech at a massive meeting of 3,000 people in Johannesburg, inspiring thousands of Indians to disobey racist laws. And he professes a vow of celibacy and publishes the first book for Indian home rule called Hind Swaraj, calling for India's independence and return to village life. In 1908, January 10th, he undergoes the first arrest and first night in jail in Johannesburg for 3 days and adopts term satyagraha and encourages Indians to burn registration cards. In 1909, he begins correspondence with Leo Tolstoy. In 1910, again, he buys another 1,100 acres near Johannesburg and establishes the Tolstoy Farm, his second ashram. In 1913, leads the Great March from Newcastle to Oaksrust and gets arrested. In 1914, negotiates the Indian Relief Act with the South African government. July 18, leaves South Africa and visits England. In 1915, January 9th, he returns to India. This January 9, 1915 is of importance because this day is being celebrated as Pravati Bharat Divas, or non-resident Indians Day, by Indian government. In 1916, he establishes the Satyagraha Ashram or Sabarmati Ashram near Sabarmati River in Ahmedabad and travels throughout India. And later on, he obtains India's independence. So let's look at this picture. This is the train station called Maritzburg in 1891. As you can see, it was a well-structured building. In front, at that time, there were no taxis, no Uber, no Lyft, but stagecoaches who pick up the passengers and take them to their destination. This was the Pietermaritzburg station in 1890. And I was invited to 150th birthday anniversary of Gandhiji at the station being celebrated as the 156th anniversary on June 7th, 2019. That was a good fortune for me to attend that. And I want to advise everybody to visit this train station. Why? Let me say again why. All Christians want to go to Jerusalem to visit where Jesus Christ was born. Many a Muslim go to Mecca to visit where the Prophet was buried. Everybody wants to go to Gaya, where Gautama got enlightened as Buddha. For us, where we are experiencing freedom and democracy, this is the station. Many that come to USA visit Chicago because Swami Vivekananda introduced the concept of Hinduism to Western religious leaders. And the Art Institute, where he spoke in 1893, again incidentally, has become a pilgrimage site for all Hindus who visit this country. So in a similar way, let us add one more location in our world to pay homage and go as a pilgrimage to where Gandhi, a 23-year-old, has become a movement, a missionary for world peace and freedom and human rights and removing social injustice. This is where I am in 2019 on June 7th, 2019, where we celebrated that celebration. Here I was pointing to the steeple to have the photographer, Mr. Prasad of Gandhi King Foundation, Hyderabad. This was where a statue was established in the business district of Petermarsburg, and there was a plaque which was placed. It says, in the vicinity of this plaque, M.K. Gandhi was evicted from a first-class compartment on the night of June 7, 1893. This incident changed the course of his life. He took up the fight against racial oppression. His active nonviolence started from that day. This is the two-faced statue of Mahatma Gandhi placed in the Petermarsburg station. This face is the one as Mohandas, as a barrister at law in South Africa. This is as Mahatma from where he became in India after we returned to India from South Africa. This was the current picture I took on June 7th, 2019. This is where I'm offering my homage. The plaque was replaced at the Petermarsburg station where we had celebrated. And behind me is Mr. David Jengan to my left. He's the president of Gandhi Memorial Trust in Petermarsburg. Mrs. Ila Gandhi is a granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi who lived in South Africa to continue Gandhiji's mission. And Mr. Prasad Goldanapalli, he is the chairman of Gandhi King Foundation, Hyderabad. Here is a picture, a group photograph. As you can see, the local MP, Mr. Omi Singh, myself, and then Mr. Prasad, Mr. David Jingan, Mrs. Ila Gandhi, His Excellency, Indian High Commissioner to South Africa, Jaydeep Sarkar, his Madam Minako Sarkar, and Consul of Durban, Mr. Anish Rajan. Well, let's talk about Gandhi, an apostle of nonviolence. Another person by name John Spear says in his book, when Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated on January 30th, 1948, the world hailed him as one of the greatest spiritual leaders, not just of the century, but of all time. He was ranked with Thoreau, Tolstoy, and St. Francis, but also with Buddha, Muhammad, and even Jesus. Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth. So said Nobel laureate Albert Einstein after the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi's legacy includes brilliantly waged struggle against institutionalized racism. Let me use that word again. Institutionalized racism in South Africa, the independence movement of India, a groundbreaking path of interreligious dialogue, but it also boasts the first widespread application of nonviolence as the most powerful tool for positive social change. Gandhi's nonviolence was not simply political. It was rooted and grounded in the spiritual, which is why he exploded beyond India's political stage onto the world stage for his own lifetime and for all times. Gandhi was first and foremost a religious man. Let me say this, a religious man in search of God. For more than 50 years, he pursued truth, proclaiming that the best way to discover truth is through the practice of active, faith-based nonviolence. And one of the gentlemen asked him, how do you live humanly in our inhuman world as it currently exists? Gandhi's answer was always the same: steadfast, persistent, dedicated, committed, patient, relentless, truthful, prayerful, loving, active nonviolence. The four key words here are truthful, prayerful, loving, and active nonviolence. A 21-year-old British student activist, Ronald Duncan, wrote a pamphlet about labor strike, which he mailed to everybody, and he got a reply from Gandhi asking him to come to know the process of organizing nonviolent means of protest. He went there in Wardha on the 23rd date on that day. And as I was saying in my letter, Gandhi says, without missing a beat, means must determine the end. Again, means must determine the ends. Indeed, it is questionable whether there is an end. The best we can do is to make sure of the method and examine our motives. They walk back, and he says, the observation he has was, Gandhi has a single-minded devotion to nonviolence. And then, single-minded devotion to nonviolence. And Duncan was profoundly impressed. In South Africa, once he created the ashrams, he said he wanted to create a culture of peace justice, and nonviolence. In other words, he challenges us to become prophets and apostles of nonviolence. Gandhi's transformation was a slow, painful process of daily renunciation, prayer, study, and radical experimentation with his own life as at great personal cost. So what happened on the June 7th, 1893? A Christian minister by name John R. Almart asked him, Gandhi, what was his most transformative experience was in his life? Actually, Gandhi wrote his autobiography in 1927, but this happened in 1893. He recollected what happened and he reflected on that about this to the gentleman. Gandhi told the story of his first week in South Africa. He was traveling overnight by train to conduct a case in Pretoria. He was quietly reading in a first-class compartment when a white conductor appeared at the door and ordered him to move immediately to a third-class compartment or be thrown off the train because he was colored. Gandhi found himself face-to-face with institutionalized racism. He refused to budge, so they baked him up and threw him off the train. He sat all night in the freezing cold on the train platform in the middle of nowhere weighing his options. That was 9 p.m., Wednesday, June 7th, 1893. His options were, he could return to India without completing the case for which he came, or he could join the handful of violent revolutionaries who seek change through bloodshed, like guerrilla warfare, or he could pursue a third path, a peaceful, prayerful, public confrontation with legalized racism until everyone's civil rights are honored. And he says, as he recollects in his biography, the train steamed away, leaving me shivering in the cold. Gandhi recalled, the creative experience comes there. I was afraid for my very life. I entered the dark waiting room. There was a white man in the room. I was afraid of him. What was my duty? I asked myself. Should I go back to India? Or should I go forward with God as my helper and face whatever was in store for me? I decided to stay and suffer. My active nonviolence began from that day, and God put me through the test during that very journey. That was one of the richest experiences of my life. Why am I talking about this June 7th, 1893? I was trying to think, a 24-year-old with a very little experience in life has made a decision to stay in South Africa for 20 years and remove the institutionalized racism, and he brought that to a public notice to the rest of the world. So my interest is, what was Gandhi before June 7th, 1893? We know most of it, what he became after June 7th, 1893. So Indians in South Africa were denied basic civil rights, including right to vote. So there, they were being fingerprinted and asked for a certificate of registration. And the Indian community was stunned. During that time, Gandhi went and spoke on September 11th, 1906. Remember, the date September 11th is very important in world history. This is in 1906. Gandhi has talked first time to 3,000 people in the Empire Theatre, and Gandhi was not sure what he would say until one of the preliminary speakers made an offhand remark announcing that he would resist these unjust laws in the name of God. Remember, he would resist these unjust laws in the name of God, even if it means his death. That was the answer. Gandhi stood up and declared that if everyone present took a vow of non-violent resistance to these unjust laws and remained faithful to their pledge and to God, even if they were arrested, imprisoned, tortured, and killed, the struggle would be won. It was as simple as that. Their voluntary suffering would attract attention. And this new method of opposing injustice, so he organized a contest. Eventually, he coined the word himself called Satyagraha, or truthfuls. Satyagraha means resisting untruth by truthful means. Gandhi explained in a speech in 1911. It can be offered at any place, at any time, by any person, even though he may be in a minority of one. If one remains steadfast in it, in a spirit of dedication, it always brings success. Satyagraha knows neither frustration nor despair. This is the movement that created history. And Gandhi really started the Satyagraha campaign. And he says, after studying thorough, that the real road to happiness lies in going to jail and undergoing sufferings and privations there in the interest of one's country and religion. And here also, it talks about the 100 acres he bought in Durban and 1,100 acres he bought in South Johannesburg to start those two farms. Here he says, once he established that, he professed 14 vows. When he established the Sabarmati River, the other ashram, the fourth ashram, which includes truth, non-violence, celibacy, poverty, fearlessness, physical labor, tolerance of all religions, and making their own class. The key words here is truth, non-violence, and tolerance of all religions. Let me repeat that. Truth, non-violence, and tolerance of all religions. They prayed together, ate together, found the land, published newspapers, and prepared themselves to suffer and die in the non-violent struggle for independence. So here, he inspired Martin Luther King Jr. He says, as I delve deeper into philosophy of Gandhi, he wrote in his book, Stride Toward Freedom, he used to think the power of love gradually diminished, and I came to see for the first time its potency in the area of social reform. Prior to reading Gandhi, I had about concluded that ethics of Jesus were only effective in individual relationship. That is, the turn the other cheek and the love your enemies philosophies were only valid, I felt, when individuals were in conflict with the other individual. He thought this was applicable at individual level. But when racial groups and nations were in conflict, a more realistic approach seemed necessary. But after reading Gandhi, as King says, I saw how utterly mistaken I was. So he says, he has come to see that Christian doctrine of love operating through the Gandhian method of nonviolence. Again, Christian doctrine of love operating through Gandhian method of nonviolence. And he says, Christ furnished the spirit and the motivation. Again, Christ furnished the spirit and motivation, while Gandhi furnished the method. That is the method of satyagraha. So Gandhi's 12 principles of spirit of humanity are these: non-violence, non-cooperation with evil as important as cooperation with good, faith in non-violence, accept or quote suffering, prayer, and ultimately pursue truth and non-violence. The key words here are prayer, truth, and non-violence. So let me go back to the spiritual Gandhi. Your left is Mohandas Gandhi at 24 as a barrister at law in South Africa. To the right, where he became a Mahatma after 30 years, became a bespectacled, wise man who was named or bestowed the title Mahatma. Here we see there are many words we hear. We call Jesus the Christ, or the anointed one. We call Muhammad the prophet, the spiritual seer. We call Gautama the Buddha, the enlightened one, but Gandhi the Mahatma, the great soul. Though he was a visionary, he was not called Maharishi. He was called Mahatma, a great soul, by Rabindranath Tagore. Gandhi, as a spiritual seeker, says the true spirituality Gandhi averred was not a speculation on the absolute, but however profound and philosophical, nor was it a quest for personal salvation. He says, treating another human being, as he stated in this song, his favorite prayer or hymn by Narsi Mehta, Vaishnava Janato Tene Kahe Id Parai Janare Paradukhe Upakar Kareto Ye Mana Abhimana Payale. It means that Vaishnava Janato, he alone is a true devotee of God who understands the pains and sufferings of others. Again, he alone is a true devotee of God who understands the pains and sufferings of others. The divinity of man, he affirmed, manifests itself according to the extent he realizes his humanity, that is, his oneness with his countrymen. So this is what it is, Vaishnava Janato. Now let's go through his childhood. He was born to Karamchand Gandhi and Putribai Gandhi. And what are his influences in childhood? Gandhi's father, Karamchand, was a lover of his clan, truthful, brave, generous, incorruptible, and impartial, and without greed. That's what he inherited from his father, Gandhi. Mother Putribai is deeply religious, attended Vaishnava temple and fasting till sunrise. And he inherited the fasting techniques or protest and non-violence through Mother Putribai. And the two stories that influenced him during his life was Shravana Pitrubhakti to his blind parents and Raja Harishchandra practicing truthfulness. These two impacted him, the young Gandhi, when he passed into 7 to 20 years of age. And he also, during schooling, went through some experiences about lying. One of the teachers asked him, when he misspelled kettle with the spelling cattle, to copy the next person. He says, I won't be able to do that, and I don't want to do that. And his attitude towards forcing people to exercise, there was some, but not to the extent that everybody has become a fan of sports. But taking care of his ailing father at home, vegetarianism and loyalty towards his wife Kasturba have become the key principles in his early life. Who are his inspiration? There were 3 people who inspired him. One is the Raichand Bhai, the Jain sage, the one on the top. Then Ruskin, whose book, Unto This Last, taught him the dignity of a life of a manual labor on the land. And Tolstoy, to the right bottom, who led him to the truth that kingdom of God is within one and not outside. So look inside is the important thing. So who is this Rajchandra? This is the man, this is the spiritual mentor who we visited before he went to South Africa. Remember this. This is the key person, other than his parents, who influenced him to shape his spirituality in attending to the June 7th, 1893 event. So Mahatma Gandhi said about him, we are all worldly people, whereas Srimad Raichandji was not of this world. We will have to take many births, whereas Srimadji, perhaps one birth is sufficient. We will perhaps be running away from liberation, whereas Srimad was advancing towards liberation at a very fast pace. And he asked him 26 questions, and he got the answers from him at an young age of 20. What is a soul and what are its functions to the karmas bounded? The soul in its pure conscious state, according to Raichandji, is in the state of its own self-realization, is the creator of its own inherent characteristics of knowledge, perception, and samadhi, that is spiritual equanimity. So he says, but in the state of its ignorance, the soul becomes a creator of emotions like anger, conceit, deceit, greed, etc. But not only this much, under the influence of these emotions, soul, through its instrumentality, also becomes a creator of things like other things. So this is what he says. The soul shapes your personality. So you have to control your soul so your personality become humane and human-oriented. And the karmas which are done in ignorance of one's own self, though in the beginning are merely seeds, yet at the time of maturity, they turn into trees laden with heavy fruits. It could be positive, it could be negative, depending on your behaviors. The second question is, like every one of us asks, at age 20, we don't know what is called God. Is he the creator of the universe, he asks. And from his mentor, he goes, just see, you and we're all mundane beings born with karmas. Our souls are in bondage of foreign matter and foreign impulses. The natural state of self with its intrinsic glory, free from all karmas, away from all impurities and bondages, is Godhood. So he says, our behavior leads to our spiritual salvation. So this has been ingrained in Gandhi's mind very early in his life at 20. He says God is endowed with the fullness of peace, bliss, and knowledge. I think this is what helped him behave the way he behaved on June 7th, 1893. And he says, the Srimadji, God is not creator of universe, according to him, but he is part of the universe. And what is moksha? This is the interesting talk at the age of 20. Gandhi asked him, that means he already had a maturity to think in spirituality. And according to Raichandji, moksha, salvation, is the absolute liberation of self from anger, conceit, greed, and other nascent propensities which bind the soul with earthly coils and other limitations. So this is what I think these introduction to these answers ingrained in Gandhiji's or Mohandas Gandhi's brain, which helped him face that situation and become a spiritual leader for peace through nonviolence. I think this is what interested me, how that such a young man behaved the way he did. We never had such experiences. And then he asked Krishna and Rama, are the avatars, are incarnation of God? Then he says, they are great personalities for us to follow. Then Rai Chandra in his case told him about the self-improvement on truth and non-violence he learned from Rai Chandji. And also it was complemented by Tolstoy book and Ruskin's books. So Gandhi says, he has drunk to his heart's content nectar of religion that was offered to me by Sri Rai Chandji. So he got explanation about religion. There are two concepts here, religion and spirituality. We always separate religion from spirituality because people think religion is God-centered and spirituality self-centered or human-centered. I think we need to combine these two to become a whole being so we can be godly in our existing life. That is what the concept Gandhi was introduced to. And here he paid a tribute to Leo Tolstoy, and he says what Tolstoy suggested is that in this world men should not accumulate wealth, no one should take part in fighting, it is sinful to wield political power. And John Ruskin says, exclusive quest for physical and material happiness of majority has no sanction in divine law. This is where Gandhi surrendered affluence to personal simplicity. And Henry David Thoreau says, nonviolent resistance was introduced by Thoreau, and he says individuals could resist immoral government action by simply refusing to cooperate. This is where the concept of nonviolence has materialized took a shape for Gandhi to execute or implement in his daily living and in the South African struggle. And the great teaching of Vedas, Thoreau said, there is no touch of sectarianism. It is of all ages, climes, and nationalities, and is a royal road for the attainment of great knowledge. So these are a couple of books I have read for this lecture. And I just want to insert here a component of Nobel Peace Prize. I was always disturbed why Gandhi was not given Nobel Peace Prize. His name was recommended to Nobel Committee in 1940s 12 times, and he was rejected because of his color. Remember that. He was rejected because of his color, because the selection committee is non-colored. But following his efforts in spirituality or peace through non-violence, many other people, both colored and non-colored people, have gotten Nobel Peace Prize, which includes South African Nelson Mandela, who's African, and Dr. Martin Luther King, who's Black African American, and non-Hispanic white Cesar Chavez, and non-Hispanic white Lech Walesa from Poland, and Black minister Desmond Tutu, and brown spiritual guru Dalai Lama, and white president of US Jimmy Carter, and black president of US Barack Obama. These are all beneficiaries of Gandhi's getting rejected for Nobel Prize. And here is Gandhi on Time magazine cover on March 31, 1930, after the incident in Salt Satyagraha, where he's depicted as Saint Gandhi. And here Gandhi, Man of the Year, for the same event, he was given in January 5th, 1931, Man of the Year cover page in Time magazine. In June 30th, 1947, also he came on the Time magazine cover, just 2 months before India's independence. Gandhi, this depiction is Gandhi's, if I seem to take part in politics, it's only because politics encircles us today like the coil of a snake from which one cannot get out. No matter how much one tries, I wish therefore to wrestle with this snake. That is this comment to the Time magazine people. And in 2000, December 1999, Man of the Century was Man of the Year, Man of the Century was to be put, and then Mohandas Gandhi came runner-up to Albert Einstein and shared with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. In this editorial, somebody writes, Joanna McGurry writes, in an age of empire and military might, Mohandas Gandhi proved that the powerless had power and that force of arms would not forever prevail against the force of spirit. This is where his spirituality came out. Sorry, I went back. So here in the same book, Nelson Mandela, the liberator of South Africa, looks at the seminal work of liberator of India. He states him as a sacred warrior. India is Gandhi's country of birth. South Africa is country of adoption. He was both an Indian and South African citizen. Both countries contributed to his intellectual and moral genius. He shaped the liberatory movements in both colonial theaters. He is the archetypal anti-colonial revolutionary. His strategy of non-cooperation, his assertion that we can dominate it only if we cooperate with the dominators, and his non-violence resistance inspired anti-colonial and anti-racist movements internationally over centuries. Here he says he is not an ordinary leader. To the right, you can read, divinely inspired. He was no ordinary leader. There are those who believe he was divinely inspired, and it is difficult not to believe with them. He dared to exhort non-violence in a time when the violence of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had exploded on us. He exhorted morality when science, technology, and the capitalist order had made it redundant. He replaced self-interest with group interest without minimizing the importance of self. The spirit of Satyagraha, the philosophy, has become both a personal and a social struggle to relay the truth, which he identified with God. Here he says, Gandhi remains today the only complete critic of advanced industrial society. Others have criticized its totalitarianism, but not its productive apparatus. He's not against science and technology. Remember, Gandhi was never against science and technology, but he places priority on the right to work and opposes mechanization to the extent that it usurps this right. Large-scale machinery he holds concentrates wealth in the hands of one man who tyrannizes the rest. Now we know there are $4 trillion industries which control the whole world's conduct, behavior, political maneuvers, and all that. So now we are seeing the both positive and negative of trillionaires. Here we go, he says, at a time when Freud was liberating sex, Gandhi was reining it in. When Marx was pitting worker against capitalist, Gandhi was reconciling them. When the dominant European thought had dropped God and soul out of the social reckoning, he was centralizing society in God and soul. At a time when the colonized had ceased to think and control, he dared to think and control. When the ideologies of the colonized had virtually disappeared, he revived them and empowered them with a potency that liberated and redeemed. Again, he empowered them, the disadvantaged people, the colored people, socially injustice done people, with a potency that liberated and redeemed. So let's look at the children of Gandhi. Here is Dalai Lama, who's trying to liberate Tibet through non-violent means. Here is Lech Walesa, who liberated Poland with a non-violent means. Here is Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks, who got civil rights for African Americans in the US. Here's Cesar Chavez on the top, a Hispanic, got United Farm Workers together and used non-violent protests. Larry Kramer, bottom left, started the LGBTQ or gay community rights. And Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi got the Burma release. And in the Philippines, Benigno Aquino has done that. Now, as I said, the missionary Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela obtained South Africa from apartheid. So Gandhi has demonstrated a powerful human following can be assembled not only through the cunning game of the usual political maneuvers and trickeries, but through the cogent example of a morally superior conduct of life. So says a scientist of the millennium, Albert Einstein. So Gandhi professes, be the change you want to see in the world. Exactly, he didn't say the word exactly in so many terms. He said, we but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our body. So if we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. So as a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. So we need not wait to see what others do. This is going to happen. That's what Gandhi said. So be the change you want to see in the world. So this is a philosophy. I call it TPR, Total Personality Reformation, versus CPR, which is called Cardiac Pulmonary Resuscitation. Here, mental status has to be changed. So you transform yourself first, understand the principle, then you perform, which is you practice, and then you can reform. Gandhi has been the best example of this philosophy: transform, perform, reform. And Afar and I will only make the whole world blind. As an ophthalmologist, I can relate to this. And here I am at the Peter Marsbeck station. I request all of you listeners, please put this on your calendar to visit, because we are experiencing freedom in the current times because of Gandhi, what he faced on June 7th, 1893. Here it is. Please visit this plaque and pay your homage at this place. I appreciate your indulgence in this talk. And here Gandhiji talking to you and smiling at you. Interestingly, Gandhi didn't want to travel in third-class compartment in South Africa. But in India, he traveled always in third-class compartment to be among people, to be with people, to be with humanity, to be with mankind. And our President Obama has said, when he visited India, what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that remains true today. The spirit of Gandhi is very much alive in India today, and it remains a great gift to the world. May we always live in the spirit of love and peace among all people, among all nations. So said Barack Obama on January 25th, 2015. Here is the Gandhiji. And this is from Gandhi 150 Commemorative Stamp Initiative. Now I'm going through this process second time. Hopefully we accomplish it. And you please be the change. And I thank my wife, Dr. Sarada Purna Sonty, for traveling with me to all these destinations in both spirit and body. Thank you, one and all. This is our sanctuary in Floss Modern Line. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sriram Sonty ji. Thank you so much. A huge collection of information, and you are totally involved in that. We really appreciate a lot. I have no words to say. And we really have that, because Dr. Sarada Purna Sonty itself, she gave a wonderful one, and you are her husband. You have to prove that. You did it. So wonderful lecture we really had. And here especially Gandhiji's words. Only one word I always watch. Manasi ekam, vachasi ekam, karman ekam, mahatmanah. That word, happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. That is, I always observe this, and so we really appreciate Dr. Sriram Sonty ji has really, in illustrated way, he gave his lecture in a beautiful way with all PowerPoints. And all my appreciation. And now, in this connection, we request Dr. Sarada Sonty ji and also Sriram Sonty ji a Vedic blessing. Then we conclude with a song, with a beautiful song that is, okay, after song only better blessing. It's Radharani Garu, are you ready?
Jai Sri Narayana.
Jai Sri Narayana. A relevant song we really want to conclude, then we do the Vedic blessing. Jai Sri Narayana, please.
Jai Sri Narayana. Thank you, Sriram Sonty ji, and beautiful and illustrative lecture.
Songs. Now they are waiting. Now we don't want to wait. Make them to wait.
Jai Sri.
Yeah.
Okay. Jai Sri. वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए पीड़ पराई जाने रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जो पीड़ पराई जाने रे पर दुखे उपकार करे तो ये मन अभिमान नाणे रे पर दुखे उपकार करे तो ये मन अभिमान नाणे रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए पीड़ पीड़ पराई जाने रे सकल लोक मान सहने वंदे नींदा ना करेगे नीरे वाच कांच मन निश्चल राखे घन घन जननी रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे समदृष्टि ने तृष्णा त्यागी पर स्त्री जेने मातरे देह जगे असत्य न बोले पर धन नव चाली हाथ रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम जय श्रीराम
Jai Srimanarayan. So now we request Dr. Sriram Sonty ji and Sarada Sonty ji to receive the Vedic blessings. Om Sri Vachasvam Ayushyam Arogyam Avidhat Dhanyam Dhanam Pasum Bahuputralabham Seta Samhatsaram Dirghamayuh Setamanam Bhavati Setayuh Ayussevendriyai Pratithishtati Om Satamanam Bhavatu Satayuh Ayussevendriyai Pratithishtati Sakala Sanmangalani Bhavantu Ayurarogya Aishwarya Abhiruddhi Siddhirastu Achandrarkam Vamshabhiruddhirastu Bhagavad Bhagavatacharya Praja Seva Parata Siddhirastu. Sakala Sarmangala, really we appreciate and wish you good health to Srimati Sarada Purna Sonty garu and Dr. Sriram Sonty garu. Please, Kshemaya Punaragamanaya cha. And we really request to have frequent talks by Sarada Purna ji and by Sriram Sonty ji also in future too. And your connection with Srinivasa Ramanuja International, the Goshthi, Sri Pratana Goshthi is really so lucky to have such a brilliant, I can say the word, the brilliant stalwarts in this particular work. We are really so blessed. Jai Sri Mandarana. Wish you good luck. And wish you happy birthday to you too.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. Om Mangalam Sri Kurukshetre Ranakshoni Viharine Parthasarathirupaya Gitacharyaya Mangalam Bharadvaja Kulam Prutodhati Vidho Acharya Pithe Situh Srinivasa Ramanujarya Guru Aptagamantadvayam तत्पादार्चनधारकं मनुमणिध्यानोल्लसन्मानसं रामकृष्णमाचार्यमस्मद्गुरुम् अहं भजे पार्थसारथिं गीताचार्यमस्मद्गुरुम् अहं भजे श्रीमन्नारायणाचार्यमस्मद्गुरुम् अहं भजे सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ओम शांति 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 जय श्रीमन्नारायण जय శ్రీమన్నారాయణమ్మ రాధారాణి గారికి అనేక మంగళ శాసనాలమ్మ ఉంటాం.